For literally thousands of years, humanity has been fighting this quiet, desperate war against an entirely undefeated enemy. I mean, think about it. Ancient kings built these monumental tombs, alchemists obsessed over finding magical elixirs, and entire empires prayed for just a taste of eternity. But in the end, death has absolutely always claimed the final victory. Every single human who has ever walked this earth has shared the exact same fate. Until, well, perhaps right now. In this explainer, we're going to step into a very real, rapidly approaching scientific era where we might actually defeat death, and we're going to explore the beautifully terrifying reality of what happens to us if we actually succeed.
I want you to picture a child born today, just a completely ordinary child. 10 fingers, 10 toes, just another beautiful human being entering the world. But unlike literally every person who has ever lived before them, this child, they will never have to die. Not from old age, not from some progressive breakdown of the body. As the decades roll by, they're going to watch their childhood friends grow old. They'll see entire generations come and go. And yet, this person remains. They're 20 years old, 30, 40, biologically frozen in the absolute prime of life, forever.
So it really brings up the ultimate question, doesn't it? What if death actually became optional? Because right now, every piece of art we've ever created, every single ambition we chase, every love story we write, it's all completely shaped by the silent, relentless ticking of a clock. As humans, we are fundamentally defined by our endings. So what exactly happens to the human mind when that clock just stops? What becomes of humanity when we finally achieve our oldest, most mythical dream?
Part 1. Defeating the ultimate disease.
Most of us just assume aging is a totally natural law of the universe, right? Unavoidable, kind of like gravity. But modern science is actually undergoing this massive paradigm shift. Researchers are starting to view aging not as an inevitability, but as a disease, and more importantly, a curable one. It really comes down to this thing called cellular senescence. Essentially, as your cells divide over time, they take on damage, they stop functioning perfectly, and they turn into these, for lack of a better term, zombie cells that refuse to die but secrete all these inflammatory chemicals. That damage just accumulates over the decades until your body can't repair itself anymore. But look, if aging is just a physical accumulation of damage, well, that means it's an engineering problem. And engineering problems, they can be solved. And the scientific world is already making some staggering leaps here. We aren't just talking about, better diets or taking your vitamins. We're talking about CRISPR gene editing, 3D printed artificial organs, nanotechnology. Scientists are even actively studying this biologically immortal jellyfish, the Turritopsis dornea, which can literally revert itself back to a younger state just to escape death. It's mind-blowing. Technologies that sounded like pure science fiction just 10 years ago are currently being tested in labs around the world. We're steadily, day by day, pushing humanity toward this extraordinary new dawn, where growing old is just no longer a law of nature.
So, fast forward with me to the year 2085. Imagine the exact moment the global broadcast goes live. Scientists step up to the podium and announce the impossible. Human aging has been entirely stopped. The very first recipient is a young adult, 25 years old, perfectly healthy, and suddenly completely immune to the ravages of time. Can you imagine the reaction? The world would absolutely erupt. It would be universally hailed as humanity's greatest achievement. Families would start dreaming of endless centuries together, mapping out these boundless futures. Death, it would seem, has finally been defeated.
Part 2. The first 100 years. At first, immortality would feel like the ultimate gift. I mean, finally, there's enough time. Time to learn every language on Earth, to master new arts, to travel across a radically changing planet. Our first immortal human gets to watch decades pass like seasons. They'll see cities transform into these sprawling, futuristic metropolises, witness humanity step foot on distant planets, and interact with technologies we can't even dream of today. But as year 75 turns into year 125, that initial joy might begin to curdle into this really isolating terror. Because while they are frozen in time, everyone else around them is still aging. Their children become grandparents. Their grandparents just become memories.
And then comes the absolute darkest reality of eternity. This immortal human has to start attending funerals. First, it's for their parents, then their oldest friends, then their partners, and eventually, their own children. And they have to do it again and again and again. Entire generations vanish like leaves in the wind, and yet they remain completely untouched. For the very first time, endless existence begins to feel a lot less like a miracle, and far more like an incredibly heavy, suffocating burden.
Part 3. A world without death.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second and look at the wider world. Eventually, this cure isn't going to belong to just one pioneer, right? If people stop dying on a mass scale, what actually happens to our planet? We exist on a sphere with finite space and finite resources. So where does the food come from to feed a population that only ever grows and never shrinks? How do you ever get a job or a promotion if the older generation literally never retires? Society as we know it is entirely built on the cycle of life and death. Removing death presents our governments with these impossible, world-breaking dilemmas.
And that leads us to a potential future fractured by a totally new, devastating kind of inequality. A strict, brutal divide between the immortal rich and the mortal poor. Because if the cure for death is expensive, and let's be real, it probably will be, it creates a world where the wealthy can literally buy forever. They could accumulate limitless capital, resources, and power over centuries. Meanwhile, those without the means just continue to live ordinary, fleeting lives. For the first time in the entire history of our species, the playing field of mortality itself is broken, and death essentially becomes a matter of economics.
Part 4. The weight of forever. Beyond all those societal logistics, though, lies a really profound psychological question. For all of human history, life has felt precious precisely because it is limited. Every birthday, every shared sunset, every fleeting moment mattered because we all knew the clock was ticking. Think about your own life. If you knew you had forever, would you still chase your dreams today? Would you ever take a real leap of faith? Or would the absolute safety of endless time strip away your motivation, making every single moment feel just a little less important and a little less urgent?
And we also have to consider the physical limits of who we actually are. What happens when your past becomes drastically larger than your future? After 4 or 5, maybe 600 years, our immortal has witnessed whole empires rise and fall. History is no longer something you read in textbooks, it's a personal, first-hand recollection. But the human brain, as remarkable as it is, just wasn't evolved to store centuries of memories. So how many lifetimes can actually fit inside a single mind? How much of your former self do you have to overwrite or actively forget just to make room to keep living?
Part 5. The value of an ending. There's a quote that really hits the nail on the head here. Death may not only end life, it may also give life its value. Perhaps achieving immortality doesn't actually usher in some golden age of human enlightenment. Perhaps instead, it teaches us something incredibly sobering about ourselves. That life was never beautiful because it lasted forever. It was beautiful precisely because it didn't. You get unlimited years, unlimited experiences, unlimited opportunities, but no ending. The first immortal human basically gains the entire universe. They get to watch the future unfold in ways we can't even imagine. But in exchange, they lose the very thing that gives any great story its meaning, the final chapter.
One day, somewhere in the very near future, a human being is going to wake up and realize they are the first person in history who will never have to die. History will change forever, civilization will fracture, and it will rebuild. But as we wrap up this explainer, the ultimate question still hangs in the air. If death disappears, what actually becomes of us? Just think about that the next time you hear a clock tick.